Black Lotus, it's really expensive, costs loads of money. There's a car called a Lotus that's black and has a funny license plate. Collectible. The reserved list is really interesting. It was created by people trying to advance their own financial position at the expense of others, and it will probably never be resolved because Wizards of the Coast is part of a publicly traded company, and the amount of time and money it would take to resolve would not generate an acceptable return of investment for that company. Fascinating stuff. It's part of the history of collectibles, the apex of people buying stuff they don't need. Uber consumers. Maybe one day it will receive the honor of being worn around some loser's neck in a celebrity boxing match. The possibilities abound. Forget sign value or any kind of critical economic analysis. This is a Veblen good. Buy some stuff that looks like it. Such is the content of most Black Lotus discussion. For me, a card this powerful and venerated deserves an analysis that isn't completely yoked to the amount of money that it's traded for or its sign value. So that's what I'll try to do. We get the English word lotus as a borrowing from the Latin lotus, which in turn comes from the ancient Greek lotus. The Oxford English Dictionary notes that a Semitic origin has sometimes been suggested for the Greek word, but this is difficult either to substantiate or to disprove. Compare Hebrew lot, mir, Arabic ladan, ladanum. Basically, the etymology gets pretty muddy at this point. Both ancient Greek lotus and the English descendant lotus have a range of meanings, botanical and otherwise. Sense 1a of the English word given in the OED is any of several water lilies of the genus Nymphia, specifically, more fully, white lotus, Nymphia lotus of East Africa and Southeast Asia, and more fully, blue lotus, Nymphia caerulea of East Africa, also called sacred lotus. Sense 1b is the architectural feature of ancient Egyptian buildings, styled after the plant in the first sense, while Sense 2 refers to a fruit represented in Homer's Odyssey as inducing in those who ate it a state of dreamy forgetfulness and a loss of all desire to return home. The plant producing this fruit, frequently elusive, cf. Lotus eater and lotophagi. In the Odyssey, the lotus was the food of the inhabitants of a land visited by Odysseus. The sailors who ate it had to be brought back to the ship by force. The lotus was identified by later Greek writers with a North African shrub, the descriptions of which are generally thought to refer to a jujube tree, Sisyphus lotus. See Sense 7, though other identifications have been proposed. Sense 3 to 5 of lotus in the OED describe various species of plants that the word has been applied to, including the nettle tree, Celtis australis, and a date plum of the Mediterranean and Southwest Asia, Disoprius lotus, commonly known as false lotus. Taken together, they show how lotus is more of a mythological idea than a specific genus of plant, at least in the contexts of storytelling and game design. All the way down in Sense 6a, we get an aquatic plant of the genus Nelumbo, especially Nelumbo nucifera, also called Indian lotus, sacred lotus, frequently with distinguishing word. Looking at pictures and botanical drawings of this version of lotus confirm that it's the one that Black Lotus's artwork is based on. Using lotus to refer to this particular plant is first recorded in the OED in 1785, nearly 300 years after the Nymphia genus in Sense 1, probably owing to the latter growing much more closely to Europe. The accompanying Sense 6b reads Buddhism and Hinduism. This plant is a divine symbol, especially of purity, non-attachment, or beauty, showing us how the Nelumbo genus Lotus has been conceived of in religious texts and art. The artwork of Black Lotus definitely descends from the Nelumbo genus flower given in Sense 6a, and I believe the foundation of its flavor comes from Sense 6b. We are certainly meant to feel the religious and cultural significance of the flower in Hinduism and Buddhism, I think we'd be overreaching to suggest that there are any direct references to the way lotuses are used symbolically in these religions. For example, the way the lotus or Padma exemplifies the path of one who leads a dharmic life. But the whiff of religion is absolutely present.
Get yourself some shoes because the air in here is unbreathable.
The design of Black Lotus uses its coloration in Sense 2 to complicate these religious implications. Lotuses, even if they're of the Nymphia variety in Sense 1, are often associated with bright, light colors, with the water lilies even being called white lotuses. Magic's lotus, being black, subverts these colors, and while Rush's artwork depicts more of a deep navy flower, we feel like this is a little bit of a forbidden lotus. The kind maybe that grows into fruits consumed by the lotus eaters, or lotophagi in Book 9 of Homer's Odyssey. The plants in this episode are never directly identified, but their effects, lulling the island's inhabitants into a peaceful, apathetic sleep, is one which I think is operating as part of Black Lotus's design.
Odysseus and his men unwittingly step into a mythological drug den.
As Homer describes them, they started at once and went among the lotus eaters, who did them no hurt, but gave them to eat of the lotus, which was so delicious that those who ate of it left off caring about home and did not even want to go back and say what had happened to them, but were for staying and munching lotus with the lotus eaters without thinking further of their return. Nevertheless, though they wept bitterly, I forced them back to the ships and made them fast under the benches. The fast manner with no obvious downside sure can be addictive. Why wake up to the real world of 3-cost mana rocks when you could stay in a free mana dreamland forever? Tennyson's poem, The Lotus Eaters, riffs on Homer's mysterious isle nearly 4,000 years later, describing the effect of the lotus fruits from the perspective of Odysseus' sailors. Surely, surely slumber is more sweet than toil, the shore than labor in the deep mid-ocean, wind and wave and oar. Oh, rest ye, brother mariners, we will not wander more. Sounds kind of like your usual Commander game with randoms, but also helps to illuminate the sense of uneasiness that's been injected into the Black Lotus of Magic the Gathering. Are we eating the lotus when we beat up Arena and find ourselves guided by the slot machine influenced blinking lights and the false promise of climbing the arena ladder into the mystic or mythic upper echelons where people grind as hard as possible for player points? Like a lot of Magic's best designs, Black Lotus doesn't take its inspiration from one place. It takes various cultural tropes and blends them, leaving the player to interpret the design as they see fit. Something that feels increasingly rare in an era where flavor connections and cultural references are more, oh, I get it, than I wonder what this means. The original artwork has the same simplicity and mysteriousness we've come to expect from early Magic artwork. Christopher Rush's way with smoky blues and purples on full display. The only other legal version of the card from Vintage Masters adds a much more explicit background, where we can see the skeleton of someone who was presumably a miner, their pickaxe and metal gauntlet intact, their bones faded to a dull grey-brown in stark contrast to the deep and vital purple of the lotus in the center of the piece. Here, Black Lotus's implied association with death, fatigue, and indolence is made clearer. It's not clear whether the lotus's unnatural power has caused the death of the miner in the background, or it's merely outlasted them, but the strong visual yoking of the lotus to the idea of death gives us a stronger idea of where its power comes from. The oversized Vintage Championship prize cards are our only other versions of Black Lotus itself, but they saved up some bangers here. The 2003 winner's card has Christopher Rush return, with a very different take on his original design. The lotus here is much more intricately detailed. We can see its stamen and stigma quite clearly. We can also see the mana power buzzing up from its petal, while the background is even harder to place than the original. It's an anonymous purple-blue landscape from pretty much the same color palette as the lotus itself, but Rush's light and shadow create a delicate contrast which lends warmth and nuance to the lotus. The prize for the 2017 North American Vintage Championship takes its cues from Lotus Bloom and Lotus Blossom. showing the different growth stages of the lotus flower. But we get something different here, as the Black Lotus can be contrasted with the regular pink flowers of the Nelumbo genus. Its petals feel especially dark and otherworldly by contrast with the pinks. One can even start to imagine the contrast in terms of death and life, the Black Lotus casting the shadow of death against all of the pink blossoms. The 2023 European Vintage Championship brought us a Black Lotus which is being stored in a glass vessel.
It's everything time.
Grounded in a stone jar that looks a lot like Iron Fist Alexander. I think he did drop something decent when you killed him, actually. It seems to form part of a shrine or altar for alchemy. Behind it is a stained glass window with a matching lotus design that looks like the small windows you find above people's front doors. There are candles, plants, intricately engraved woodwork, but it's hard to work out what the lotus is doing here. Maybe it's a tribute to all of the Black Lotuses squirreled away in people's binders, lofts, or grading cases, their owners pursuing the impossible dream of keeping them immaculate forever, thereby never being able to fully harness their power. Get down to your local vintage tournaments, lads. The 2023 championships in Asia brought a rare treat, at least as far as modern Magic artwork goes. A close-up depiction of the card that makes the viewer do a little bit of work. Jarl Threat takes advantage of the angle and proximity of the lotus to show us some subtle but eye-catching detail on the petals, the delicate engraving suggesting something man-made, or at least natural. Light plays an important role here in helping the viewer position the flower. It seems to be emanating from the stigma of the plant rather than any external source, gently tracing the outline of the thinnest parts of the petals. A wonderful balancing act between tradition and innovation. This version definitely does justice to the oversized frame and helps us to gain a more concrete image of the lotus in our mind. The final prize card from 2023, the North American one, mixes realism and symbolism to disconcerting effect. The anonymous pool of water combined with the abstracted shapes in the background make it feel like a dream image, as does the way the skull is almost blended into the pool of water. But perhaps this is a bit closer to reality. The buildings in the background hint that this is an organized process, a way to farm Black Lotuses by transgressing traditional burial of the dead ethics. The transition from the skull to the foliage and finally the lotus flower is brilliantly done, showing, as not many other depictions do, a lotus surrounded by other flora. The detailing of the flower and the buzzing purple globs of mana hammer home the alchemical feat that's been achieved here. Casting Black Lotus usually means a very tough game for your opponents. I don't want to insult people's intelligence with yet another rehearsal of the most powerful card in Magic Snooze Fest, but Black Lotus is up there. As with everything in Magic, context is very important, so your Lotus will often be the best card in a constructed Vintage deck, whereas in Vintage Cube it might lose out a little bit to more adaptable long game cards like Ancestral Recall and Time Warp. It is the best fast mana ever printed, that's hard to argue against, and its artifact type, ability to be cast repeatedly from the graveyard, and color fixing make infinite game-winning loops fairly trivial. The preponderance of treasure in recent sets maybe take a bit of the luster off, but hey, no getting those back from the graveyard. Black Lotus is the most iconic card to cheat mana. Magic is fundamentally designed around each player playing a single land each turn, thereby having access to one more mana than the previous turn. Players can miss land drops, sure, and play cards like Llanowar Elves to multiply their mana, but Black Lotus gives an adrenaline-surging, one-time only boost of 3 extra mana. Cheating the usual laws of mana in this way is historically one of the most powerful things a player can do, even more so in the modern game where low-costed cards have become more powerful than ever before, and the game can be over in a few turns. Vintage Cube's top picks wax and wane, but Lotus's mana burst keeps it at the very top, even in today's ultra-efficient creature era. Black Lotus is referenced directly in a surprisingly low number of cards printed after Alpha. I could count 19 versions of the Lotus effect in total, though cards from the plane of Tarkir often make reference to fairly powered Lotuses. 16 of these have Lotus in the name. The exceptions are Lion's Eye Diamond and its cleverly named descendant, Diamond Lion. Oracle of the Alpha, my boy, conjures a copy of the actual Black Lotus on Arena only, of course. Otherwise, get your pens and papers out. We see depictions of the Lotus in the artwork of 5 more cards, along with flavor text references in another 4. This restraint, I feel, helps to preserve the Lotus's aura of rarity and power. After all these years, the effect still feels special. First fixed Black Lotus was Lion's Eye Diamond, just 3 years after Alpha in 1996's Mirage. And boy how they fixed it, requiring the player to discard their hand in order to activate its ability, which is the Black Lotus effect. There is a very small buyout of it being a zero-cost artifact, but Lion's Eye Diamond, or LED, was pretty much unusable until highly efficient graveyard enablers like Underworld Breach came out, not caring so much if the cards you want to cast are in your hand or in your graveyard. Lion's Eye Diamond enables some pretty spectacular combos. Oftentimes, the discard your hand rider will amount to nothing because everything you want to cast is in your graveyard already. Classic case of an apparently innocuous card being powered up by a much later complementary one, Lion's Eye Diamond now deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as its ancestor. The self-mythologizing world building on this card is really nice too. Props to whoever wrote the flavor texts. Held in the Lion's Eye, Zalfiran saying, meaning caught in the moment of crisis. It absolutely feels like the kind of figurative language that would go on to be a proverbial or idiomatic saying in English. And from that Zalfiran saying, we get the sense of a highly perilous mana source. I'm not sure how to pass Margaret Organ Keen's artwork. The different levels of color used in the foreground and background, to me, make it feel like an engraving, or a very aged illustration like the Bayeux tapestry or something from the inside of a pyramid, fitting in with the proverbial tail in the flavor text. It's definitely memorable and unique, the tamed lion and intricate jewel dominating the scene, along with the smirk of its wielder. The vintage master's artwork is sweet too. The diamond definitely looks like some serious mana producing hardware, reflecting a pretty dozy looking lion. The 5 mana symbols on its wielder's gauntlets are a nice touch. I guess this is someone with plenty of experience of cheating mana in roundabout ways, such as taming lions. I'll discuss Lion's Eye Diamond's creature descendant here too, Diamond Lion. From Modern Horizons 2 in 2021, the card takes Lion's Eye Diamond and puts it on a 2/2 body, as well as upping the cost to 2 colorless mana. I find this design to be an underwhelming and glib tribute to what was, by this point in time, a pretty legendary card. Instead of expanding the Lion's Eye myth, we get the designers just picking 2 words out of the original name and going with that. Cool. The flavor text hints at a kind of Faustian pact, which follows if you crack the lion and discard your hand, but there's nothing forcing you to do that, like in some of the Faustian pact style black enchantments, and the Faustian Pact itself. You can also just keep an easy to cast 2/2 for 2 hanging around. Ultimately, Diamond Lion falls into the trap of self-referentiality for the sake of it. The players who might appreciate the card will already know that LED is a famous and cool card. You might need to do more than imply that and say, job's a good un. Lotus Veil from 1997's Weatherlight gives the Lotus effect on a land, but with some pretty intense riders. You have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands, or it goes straight to the graveyard. It produces 3 mana, making it a very juicy target for the land destruction that was more common at the time. The artwork is somewhat otherworldly. I didn't really expect to see John Avon's name in the illustration box, but it does well to create the impression of an artificially cultivated lotus farm. It's vaguely 90s CGI style, giving away that something is wrong. The restrained flavor text makes us wonder what has been created here. Certainly not something that's viable in constructed formats. 2019's M20 set would contain Lotus Field, its navy and purple hues mirroring the original Black Lotus more closely. Lotus Field enters tapped, but offers a couple of upgrades on Lotus Veil. The sacrificed lands do not have to be untapped, so the initial mana disadvantage is brought back up to neutral. It also gains hexproof, making it much less of a target for removal. Lotus Field would find its way into an eponymous combo deck in Pioneer, which used untap effects to gain effectively infinite mana, a few more hoops to jump through than with a Black Lotus, of course, and some control decks in various formats used Teferi, Hero of Dominaria to untap it at the end of their turn and have 3+ mana available during the opponent's turn. We're very used to seeing watered-down versions of Magic's most illustrious cards, but Lotus Veil and Lotus Field show a nice development of design. While Lotus Veil was Black Lotus nerfed into oblivion, the small improvements on Lotus Field allow players to access that wonderful feeling of tapping a permanent for 3 mana, even if they had to do a bit of work for it. The card finds its perfect niche in the knob-twiddling bonanza of Pioneer Lotus Field, hidden strings for the win. The player won't get the same visceral rush of cracking a Black Lotus for a turn 1 win or epic combo, but this type of incremental design opens up new space and extends the lifespan of the game. Right after Weatherlight came Tempest, bringing us Lotus Petal, a very elegantly designed third of a Black Lotus. The petal beautifully captures the essence of the original card. A single navy purple petal, delicate but throbbing with the power of excess mana. The flavor text doesn't make any sense at all. Hard to imagine, mused Hannah, stroking the petal. Such a lovely flower inspiring such greed. If something is lovely, why wouldn't it inspire greed? But it's a very cool design overall. Delicate in that the 1 mana burst is probably a waste of a card in a lot of decks, but in the right combo or artifact-focused deck, it can be harnessed to perform at a much higher level than its apparent humble rules text. As early as 1998's Unglued, Black Lotus had entered the realm of parody. Blacker Lotus, again illustrated by Christopher Rush, shows a comedically large Black Lotus, with a regular-sized one for scale. And you have to physically destroy the card to activate its ability, which adds 1 more mana than the original. Very good. I wonder if the designers knew quite how prophetic the symbolism of the requirement to tear Black Lotus into pieces would become. Come Magic's 30th anniversary, we would indeed get a Black Lotus worthy of this fate. Later in 1998, Urza's Saga gave us Lotus Blossom, which doesn't really feel very Lotusy. You have to invest 2 mana to get it going, then wait until your next upkeep to get a petal counter on it, allowing you to sacrifice it for 1 mana, or your following upkeep you can sacrifice it to get back the initial 2 mana that you invested. Beyond that, you're netting mana, but the time investment needed and having to coordinate your plays so that you have a burst of mana when you need it both rob the card of its appeal. I guess there's the mechanical story of you tending the Lotus until it blooms and gives you a mana hit, but it's so slow no one's going to hang around for the ending. Maybe in 1998 you could get away with such durdling, but this really feels like a regular artifact they slapped the Lotus brand on to generate a bit of hype. It's a shame, as the original artwork by Randy Gallegos is nicely done, gently showing the 3 stages of a Lotus blooming, without trying to cram too much of the card's mechanical action into the piece. Its full art treatment in Dominaria Remastered pays tribute to the original, showing a procession of lotus flowers gradually blooming in an almost Monet-esque watercolor. Lotus Guardian from 2000's Invasion features some gorgeously weird detailing on its head. An artifact dragon who, according to the flavor text, is tasked with guarding the lotus fields. In terms of what the hell it's supposed to do mechanically, I can't really offer an explanation, since it's an overcosted 4/4 flyer that can also tap for 1 mana. Very useful when you already have 7.
Very clean, very nice. But this is unnecessary.
Kinda feels like an influencer-led advertising campaign where you slap some shill's endorsement onto a weak and pointless product. The Mirrodin's own Lotus, the Gilded variety, came out in 2003's Mirrodin, adding an extra layer of artifactness to this storied artifact by wrapping it in gold.
That is a lot of gold.
What the Trump administration would do if it ever got its hands on an alpha Black Lotus, I guess. Gilded Lotus is one of those brilliantly balanced cards that has been reprinted many times and crops up in a lot of different environments, even bringing a bit of lux and glamour to the entry-level Foundation sets. Tapping for 3 mana every turn is a massive jump, but it asks the player to invest 5 mana to get it going, not affecting the board on a key turn. Then pray an opponent doesn't have cheap artifact removal, even if tapping your Gilded Lotus for counterspell mana is a pretty satisfying play. It's largely been outclassed by Relic of Sauron in queue play, but nothing can take away from the feeling of being able to tap Lotus mana turn after turn. The original artwork is maybe not the most iconic here. We can't really see the gilding of the Lotus. Instead, it comes to us as part of an artifact fever dream, the purples and oranges swirling around it, perhaps depicting the moment of its creation. The first printing does contain its most enduring flavor text: "Over such beauty, wars are fought. With such power, wars are won." The first sentence succinctly describes the stupidity of most human warmongering. The second hammers home the ungodly power of this type of artifact. This version was reprinted in M13, and then its flavor text recycled for a very droopy but still Gilded Lotus in From the Vault 20. I guess they used liquid metal coating, as this lotus flower maintains some of its floral softness, wilting perhaps at the moment of gilding, and forever preserved looking a little bit worse for wear. When we returned to Dominaria in 2018, we got a shiny new Gilded Lotus, resplendent among the green lily pads, and looking more static and authoritative than previous depictions. Looking a bit closer, we can see the flower is growing out of what seems to be a ruined courtyard, connecting the artwork to the narrative theme of Dominaria's destruction and reconstruction in the 2018 set. The flavor text references Khan's quest to atone for his prior failures, notably stepping in Phyrexian dog poo and treading it across the multiverse. This artwork would be reprinted across various Commander products up until Foundations, when the flavor text was reverted back to the original, though Dominaria's ruins remain. Highly inspired Secret Lair, a box of rocks, gives us Gilded Lotus as, for once, a very dainty and delicate artifact, which apparently needs to be scrupulously cared for by the angel who dominates the artwork, otherwise its spell will be broken. A good reminder of the scale of lotus flowers when we've become accustomed to seeing very close-up perspectives of them and revering them thus. Showcasing the flexibility of its design, Gilded Lotus shows up in the Necrons deck from Warhammer 40k Universes Beyond as a highly filigreed but still recognizable lotus shape. The flavor text is brilliant, telling what amounts to a short story in a few lines and showing that, don't you know, there are some collaborations that work better for Magic than others. Who could ever have known? We're told that this lotus is born of the Necrons' relentless pursuit of utility. We can imagine that it's wholly artificial, unlike the Gilded Lotus from Mirrodin or the others in Magic's multiverse. Either way, the export of a card name and matching mechanical effect is executed very elegantly here. Brothers War set sees us well into the Funko Pop sign value era of Magic cards, with 3 versions of basically the same card printed. There's a version of the Dominaria Gilded Lotus in the old brown border for artifacts, then a schematic version of the same artwork by the same artist, which doesn't make much sense to me, since if you were sketching the prototype for an invention, why would you include the fauna that it could potentially be found near to in the far future? Anyway, you can also get this version of the card in the serialized format because adding numbers to cards makes them more valuable and forces their users to speak English. The most recent Gilded Lotus was given out as part of the Summer Super Drop 2025, showing us a Final Fantasy VII version of the card, much less tangibly gilded, perhaps imbued magically with the power to be used again and again. By far the most naturalistic of the Gilded Lotuses, it spans the full card and makes use of a much brighter color palette than the older, more metallic Lotuses. I covered Mox Lotus in my Moxen video. I still don't think the joke's funny, but then I don't have Magic R&D's capacious sense of humor. Time Spiral is the go-to set for modern reworkings of classic effects, and sure enough, 2006 brought us Lotus Bloom. It feels very much like a reworking of Lotus Blossom, Indeed, blossom and bloom share the same etymology, bloom being a Middle English contraction of the blossom formation, which can be charted all the way back to Proto-Indo-European. Although the suspend mechanic allows it to function much more elegantly. No more casting for 2 mana, tapping it to build up your petal counters, blah blah blah. Instead you get the Lotus effect, but you have to wait for it. Very time, very spiral. The design is similar to Mox Tantalites, which would arrive 13 years later in Modern Horizons 1. Lotus Cobra, from 2009's original Zendikar set, and best pronounced in a northeastern accent, gives us the first example of a Lotus creature. I love the idea of a cobra that's been feasting on these mystical plants and has managed to acquire some of their mana generating power. Adopting Zendikar's landfall mechanic, it gives you a mana of any color whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. Just the 1 mana per land, but with fetch lands and ramp spells, you can quickly start to generate Black Lotus levels of mana. The effect feels like something that should be on an enchantment, but you also get yourself a 2/1 creature as part of the deal. More vulnerable to removal, sure, but also able to brawl on early turns if things get real. Sailing over to Magic's version of ancient Greece, we get Nyx Lotus, a devotion-powered version of the Lotus effect, although in this instance you have to invest 4 mana in it to get the artifact onto the battlefield. The components of the card all fit together nicely thanks to the devotion mechanic and Theros' world building. Nyx is Theros' night sky, home of the gods as well as the mortals' inner lives, their desires and subconscious urges. Inspired in name and function by the underworld river Styx, talent borrows, genius steals, right? The idea of a Lotus being formed out of the ambient psychic energy swirling around Nyx is pretty cool. The artwork seems to depict it being harnessed in a temple, still crackling with mana energy, as if it's been pulled down from the sky, or maybe it's the Nyx sky that powers it. It's a shame that there's no flavor text to explain. Instead, we get reminder text of the devotion mechanic. Mechanically, alas, this is a commander card, a piece of ramp that requires a lot of mana to be invested up front, and then only pays back that mana under certain conditions. A couple of years later, we get Timeless Lotus from Dominaria United, a really elegant way to call back to the original Lotus as a relic that has endured throughout the centuries following the war between Urza and Mishra. The flavor text spans an impressive amount of time and events. Urza exploited nature to power his war machines. In time, nature exploited his war machines to renew itself. We can imagine how the Black Lotus forms part of the natural, but magical flora of Dominaria, cruelly harnessed by Urza for warfare and domination, as natural wonders so often are by humans. Nature laughs last, though, since as empires fall and futile Ozymandias' wail,
"My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair."
nature renews and regrows. In this case, to the tune of Wooburg mana every turn for an initial investment of 5 mana. The color palette selected by Lindsay Look, also the artist responsible for the pearlescent Lion's Eye Diamond Vintage Masters reprint, tells this story really nicely, with the violet-tinged, almost crystalline lotus contrasting intensely with the greys, greens, and browns of Urza's destructive efforts, a point the tiny lotus's size underlines. Mechanically, again, this is probably commander only, as spending 5 mana to get 5 mana next turn, and thereafter is probably not going to work out great, but that doesn't take away from the story. And so we come to Jewled Lotus, probably the most controversial Lotus variant since the original. In a way, it's the purest tribute to Black Lotus. It's a zero-cost artifact, and its activated ability gives its owner the exact Lotus effect of 3 mana of any one color, with one condition. It can only be spent to cast your commander, making the card negligibly useful outside of multiplayer commander games. It was swiftly banned in Duel Commander. The internet's reacted, as it does, and I don't think it's particularly interesting to go through all of the knee-jerking, except for maybe Sheldon Menery's measured response. For what it's worth, I think that Jewled Lotus is something of a victim of circumstance. It's not hugely more powerful than the ridiculous vintage bangers that are considered staples of Commander like Mana Vault and Sol Ring, but it was printed during a time when Commander was exploding in popularity, and its players had stronger opinions and media to express them than ever before. It wears the fact that it was designed for Commander in its rules text, which always seems to increase the level of emotional reaction, if not the power of the card. The cards, like Sol Ring and Mana Crypt, is a pretty much dead draw late game, which I feel balances it sufficiently at most tables outside of the most competitive ones. The other extremely obvious point to note that somehow rarely gets noted is that Commander, for the time being at least, is a casual format and players are free to play it how they enjoy. Any new designs that get printed you don't want to play with or spend money on, just don't play them. Chasing every new hot tech or powerful card is maybe important for competitive formats, but doing it for your EDH deck is an absolute hiding to nothing, especially with the current accelerated release schedule. I personally love cards where the designers flirt with the reserved list and come up with creative methods to introduce reserved list power, either in a more balanced way like Echo of the Eons, or a more hacky, litigious kind of way, as here.
It's about getting lawyers, train them up in the words, the scriptures, and we're going to help the poor, the fatherless, that can't afford their legality fee. They can't afford justice.
Jewled Lotus is clearly designed to feel like Black Lotus, but the extra text obviously makes it a different card. The success of its execution was unfortunately drowned out in all of the controversy, but it's worth noting the details. The plush, velvety pillow the Jewled Lotus is placed on recalls the purplish tones of the original Black Lotus, while its showcase art manages to capture the moment of the Lotus being cracked for mana with considerable panache. The stained glass windows indicate that the act of bribery described in the flavor text is happening inside a church. Highly original scenario for the designers to engineer, given organized religion's strong tradition of fair and equitable treatment for all. I do really like that the flavor text describes an attempted bribe. Jewled Lotus is a bribe to players to buy Commander Legends, to crack packs until they get to the promise of its power and value, a few quid in the bank or a few quick victories over your friends. Ultimately, though, the pursuit of trinkets like this will not make you a better player or person, or even a richer one, as Jewled Lotus was banned in Commander on September 23rd, 2024, along with Nadu, the designed for Commander Modern Horizons 3 card that broke Modern.
Concept. Well, it's simply brilliant. It's TNT. You know what it stands for?
Like a code or something.
Oh, yeah. The T is for taters, N is for and the final T? Tits. Because all the waitresses at TNT have huge tits. Taters and tits.
Oh my God. How on earth did you even think of this?
How does any genius figure out his inventions? I mean, how did Leonardo DiCaprio figure out about gravity? Because the bitch was sleeping underneath a tree and an apple hit him on his head.
This is amazing. I'm all over this.
Slightly earlier in 2024, we got Lotus Ring as part of the Big Score supplement to Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Technically, the Big Score was a series of epilogue boosters, styled after the March of the Machine Aftermath ones, but integrated into the main set after the strong negative reaction to the epilogue booster format. Aha product design, that's noble benevolent pursuit. Lotus Ring is a cool idea, an equipment Lotus, but its stats don't really deliver anything like a Lotus's power. A lot of 3s, sure, but 3 to cast and 3 to equip doth not an exciting equipment make. Your creature gets +3/+3 and vigilance, so will become a bit of a house in combat, but you have to tap and sacrifice it to get the 3 mana, which feels really inefficient. There's maybe something you could do with tokens here, but in general, suiting up a big threat, then sacrificing it for mana is a good way to lose a game of Magic. Both the regular and showcase artworks make me think this might be a bit of a nod to the One Ring. Both rings are indestructible, and the design of the Lotus Ring recalls the One Ring's inscription. Authorial speculation here, but it feels like a bit of a nod to the emerging Universes Beyond's takeover. The One Ring is emblematic not only of the Lord of the Rings series, but of the way Universes Beyond cards are taking over Magic, their push power making them impossible for players to do without, creating a higher level of profitability than ever before. Lotus Ring says, hey look, MTG still has Legends to mine, it's just not very powerful. The most recent Lotus at the time of writing is Radiant Lotus from early 2025's Ether Drift. Mechanically, again, this feels like a win more commander card. It costs 6 mana to cast, then lets its user tap it to sacrifice any number of artifacts, with each one becoming a Black Lotus on its way out and giving you 3 mana. So if you want to use it more than once per turn, you'd better find a way to untap it. The fact that they felt the need to shut off all possible fun to be had with this 6 mana do nothing artifact is pretty hilarious. Shining atop one of the Ether Drift raceways, its flavor text mentions hope blooming after devastation. One could imagine this giving the user a little mana every turn to represent this rebuilding, but no, alas, you have to feed it your own artifacts. Ichor Wellsprings ahoy. Oh, and its showcase art looks like a Pokemon EX card. Not exactly the most groundbreaking take on Lotus design, but it would be naive to expect it to be. Where do we go from Radiant Lotus? More unplayable variants to bulk out the mythic slots of hastily designed sets, which try to juice a few extra dollars out of Commander players, presumably. Looking back at the history of Lotus design, we can observe a sharp turn. From building on the original effects, and trying to rein it in whilst preserving the unique feeling it gives to the player, to cards demanding the kind of acceleration that's only really possible in EDH, which then produce even more mana, and have Lotus slapped on them like a Quartz Cartier sold at the lowest possible price that LVMH will sanction. I'm dealing in counterfactual somewhat, but I feel there's a huge amount of design space for Black Lotus that remains uncharted. People talk a lot about parasitic mechanics or hat sets. Props to whoever came up with this name, it's pretty perfect. And the design of icons like Black Lotus seems to follow this process too. Nyx Lotus and Radiant Lotus just feel like they slapped the sticker of the place onto an iconic card, then powered it down massively to make sure it didn't break standard. I'd love to see a Lotus that expands on the story in the Vintage Masters and 2023 North American Championship cards. The relation between the free fast mana and the quickening of death, or sacrifice that must be paid, would be compelling to see depicted in the game mechanics. Such imaginative work is left to the artists alone, as the game designers have their own philosophy to adhere to. Fire design principles.
Let's do the fold-in. Okay. What higher power do TV evangelists worship? I'll say God. I'll say Jesus. The almighty dollar!
How long until the first Universes Beyond Lotus? Will it be a bagel? Or maybe the second pizza in a buy one get one free deal?
Domino. Hoo-hoo.
It's academic really, as Universes Beyond, like the European Super League, is only an enzyme to accelerate a malaise that haunts all of the things we love, the spectre of finance capital. Lotus the card design is following Lotus the card itself, from bewitching oddity and game piece to dead gold brick swapped between speculators. The advent of digital play, in a photo-negative kind of way, has made the card more accessible to players. You can get lucky in Vintage Cube and open one, or you can build an Oracle of the Alpha deck designed to shuffle a Lotus in and find it with Dig Through Time. It's a shame that this is as close as most players, including myself, will get to the card.
This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real?
The activated ability causes the card to go to the graveyard, the same way its mystique abruptly fades in the modern era of Magic. Black Lotus, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.